Welcome.
Fabulous. Are you turn this on or is it already on?
I think it's on.
Testes.
It is not.
Is this on? Is this on? You guys have worn my voice out this weekend. It's been so wonderful and everybody. Thank you guys for coming. It's your old pal, the Crypt Keeper, and I'm glad to just sit down and relax and enough about me. What do you think of me? No.
You gave me nightmares.
Excellent. That means I did my job.
Yeah, you're still doing. I'm 50.
Did I make you shit your pants?
None of your business.
Mind your business, sir.
That never gets old, actually, because I loved horror as a kid myself. I mean, I watched all the Universal horror monster movies and all that stuff. All the William Castle stuff would come on, like The Tingler would come on TV. Back when I was a kid, we didn't have streaming or videos or anything. Occasionally you could go out and buy a Super 8 movie or something if you had a camera to watch stuff, but nowhere could you see stuff unless it came on TV. And my parents were like, they were too cheap to buy a TV guide. So, you would look through the local newspaper listings, hoping that Twilight movie, which came on at 4:30 in the afternoon, instead of a Doris Day movie or, Oklahoma or something, was playing, Mothra or Attack of the 50-Foot Woman or one of the Universal horror monster movies. Abbott and Costello Meets Frankenstein, which is still my favorite horror comedy. And I remember I loved Frankenstein. I remember there's the scene where they've come from Transylvania and he's shipped Frankenstein and he's, Bud finds it in the packing material and I'm like, Mom, you can order Frankenstein! And I collected Tales from the Crypt comic books and I didn't collect them, I had some. My grandfather had a store and, we'd go down with my cousins to go and they would always try to get stuff off the top shelf, like girly magazines and stuff. But me, I was grabbing the Tales from the Crypt comic books. And I used to have to hide them from my mom. I put them in these Casper comics that weren't mine, put that on the cover so she didn't know I was reading them. But I went in the back of some comic book and found like a 6-foot cutout of Frankenstein. And I had it in the corner of my bedroom, and I remember I'd wake up and it'd be closer to the bed. I know my brother had been pushing it, trying to scare me, pushing it closer to the bed. But and I had those Aurora models and stuff, doing all the Universal horror monster movies. But I remember they would also do the Roger Corman stuff, like House of Wax, and they wouldn't show things that were too hardcore, like that were too kind of, fucked up, like Mask of the Red Death, which was, about the Spanish Inquisition, But I do remember going to a drive-in movie. We had 5 kids in our family. We were supposed to sit in the back of the station wagon in our pajamas and fall asleep after the cartoons. And my parents had gone to the movies, and this was uncharacteristic of them to go to a horror movie, but it was maybe because Vincent Price was in it or something, but it was Mask of the Red Death. And I remember waking up and just like, oh shit, this is awesome. And my parents didn't know I was watching it the whole time. But, oh my God, they just tattooed that, they just branded that woman with an upside down cross. It's so cool, So you can see what possessed me to be able to land the part of the Crypt Keeper.
Yeah. So do you have a favorite Universal monster?
Oh, definitely Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, I loved all of them. Anything with a theremin, I mean, I used to love like the Wolfman movies. Anytime you'd look up at the moon and go, all that stuff. But yeah, Creature from the Black Lagoon was. I didn't love the Creature from the Black Lagoon movies as much as I loved the actual character, the creature. But the Frankenstein stories were great, so good. Dracula, obviously. But that's why I loved Abbott and Costello Meets Frankenstein, because they had like half of the Universal horror monsters in it,
So can you tell me, we all want to know, if we don't, your acting journey, because you are a master of character, a master of voices.
Thank you.
And how did this begin for you?
I loved performing as a kid. In fact, my mom was quite the seamstress, so she used to make, her own clothes and that kind of stuff, dresses for my sisters and stuff like that. And I would be like, hey Mom, I want to do this thing where I have one hand come up out of my coat. And she would sew my coat with a sleeve in it so I can have my other hand come up so it looked like answer the phone and shit, And I always loved performing, and by the time, I remember in elementary school they would do plays, or we would, I'd be like, I'd get some of my sister's hair and glue it on my face and be the villain, make a top hat out of cardboard and that kind of thing. But by the time I got in high school, I full on got into the plays, and I loved it, and I was a good enough singer to get into do the musicals and that kind of thing. And then, I decided that's what I was going to pursue as a career. My parents were like, "Don't you want something to fall back on?" And I'm like, I think that anything else that I would try other than acting would be harder for me. Than, it just wasn't. I was a dyslexic kid. They didn't know what that was, back then. It just said, he doesn't apply himself. He's lazy. Blah 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 blah. And it really was just, I wasn't so severely dyslexic that I couldn't eventually learn. But I think I probably truly didn't learn to properly read and write till I was at least, leaving second grade, getting into third grade. Kids in preschool are reading now. It's just, I was behind. So some of my other skills really, came to being. I remember my second time in third grade. I remember this one teacher goes, you're really good when you stand up in front of the class and you read. So she would have me do poems in front of the class or stuff like that where you had to play the characters and that kind of thing. But once I got into college, I went full into it. I went to Towson University where John Glover went to school, and Dwight Schultz, who we know from the A-Team, and Charles Dutton, Rock, who we know, Eric King from Dexter, I went to school with. I went to school with some really good actors, had really good instructors. I got my first off-Broadway show right out of college in New York, and it was a miserable experience just because, the production team and the creative team got into a fight over how to do the show and all this stuff, and so it lasted 3 weeks and closed, and I was getting paid $175 a week. Nobody can live in Manhattan on $175 a week, even in 1980. So I started street performing. I started street performing as a way to make a living in front of the Metropolitan Museum. And if who's ever been to the Metropolitan Museum in New York? It's a huge museum, and it has these huge set of stairs that come their way down to Fifth Avenue. So there's all this stuff happening down on the sidewalk, and it literally looks like an amphitheater. So I would put on white face, and I'd climb the building across the street where people could see me and hang a banner that said, "Now appearing John Kassir," and people would come and sit on the steps, and I would do my act, and I kind of became semi-famous as one of those guys that performs on the street. And, I got arrested a couple of times doing it too, but it got thrown out of day court both times. The judge was to the cops, he was blocking traffic. If I got a good crowd, it would block traffic on Fifth Avenue. But I had a background in doing sketch comedy in college and that kind of thing, and we did some USO tours as comedians and got to go all over the Mediterranean, Spain, Italy, Greece, and Turkey, and then we did another tour that went to Japan and Korea and the Philippines and Australia and Jakarta and all these places performing for the U.S. military. And so that kind of cut my teeth to do kind of stand-up, but I really wasn't doing stand-up. And then I got in an off-Broadway show that was a big hit off-Broadway called Three Guys Naked from the Waist Down. And I know it sounds like a gay review in the Village, right? But it was think Dreamgirls, but with stand-up comics. So it's a musical about 3 stand-up comics, and it was Scott Bakula, who we all know as a wonderful not only actor but stage actor, and can sing and dance and the whole thing. If you've ever seen it, it's amazing. And a guy named Jerry Colker, who had been in Chorus Line and that kind of thing, and he wrote the show. And I played, Scott played kind of like the, charming MC type, and Jerry played this, which was based on himself, played this, angry law student from Harvard who dropped out of school to become a stand-up comic. So he was always up on a soapbox, doing his, angry comedy. And I played kind of like an Andy Kaufman-ish, just lost human being who was confused about his, his religion and his sexuality and all these things. Like the first time you meet me, he walks out. Everybody used to record on a tape recorder, record their act so they could listen to it play back. Well, he comes out and he just walks up on the piano in a monk's robe and hangs himself, records it, and then turns it off and walks off stage. That's the first time you meet him. So it's like, and he does it in the middle of Scott's act. So it's kind of like, and it gets more and more interesting from there. But that character, the 3 of them wind up improvising one night, and it hits huge. And then they wind up on the Johnny Carson show, and they wind up having their own show about 3 cops in drag, and called Hello Fellas, and and it's the death of all of them. I mean, it ruined, because they're true artists, just truly themselves. They didn't know how to play that game, especially my character. But people assumed that I was a stand-up comic because I was playing this character. And I got approached by these people, Star Search. Who remembers Star Search? Which is, for those of you who don't know it, it's, the original America's Got Talent, or, more like American Idol or that kind of thing, and more in a bubble like that. But, they had bands up against bands, they had dancers up against dancers, singers up against singers, actors up against actors, spokesmodels. And they had comedians, and they were getting all the comedians out of the clubs. They were all really good. And they saw me in the show, and they said, "Hey, we want you to be on Star Search." And I'm like, "As what? A singer? I can sing. I'm in a musical, but not like this guy, Sam Harris, who was winning week after week. This guy was unbelievable." I go, "I can't beat that guy." They go, No, we want you to come on as a stand-up comic." And I was like, "Well, I'm not really a stand-up comic. I'm playing a stand-up." And they go, "Well, you can win $100,000. I'm like, "Fuck, have you seen my act?" So I went on the show, and I was pulling out stuff I had done in high school, and while I was, with my comedy group Animal Crackers that I had gone on USO tours with, and my street performing act, I was pulling out stuff, and I just kept winning with all these bits. Each week I would, you had to do 2.5 minutes. Like I would do like the Wizard of Oz in 2.5 minutes. Like, is it twisted? Is it twisted? Dorothy, I'm in. Come on, Toto. As coroner, I must concur, I thoroughly examined her. We represent the lollipop view, the lollipop view, the lollipop. Who killed my sister? Was it you with the ruby slippers? Oh, rubbish. You have no powers here. Be gone before someone drops a house on you. All right, I'll bide my time. But I'll get you, my pretty. An old dog, too. Fly, fly, What's them? That's the castle of the Wicked Witch. Oh, Dorothy's in that awful place. Oh, I hate to think of her in there. Fellas, we've got to get her out. I got a plan how to get in there, and you're gonna lead us. All right, I'll go in there for Dorothy. Wicked Witch or no Wicked Witch? Guys or no guys, there's just one thing I want you fellas to do. What's that? Talk me out of it. Wow! Whoa! Do, 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 do. Oh, yo. I'm
want you to feel like a performing monkey,
No,
so I
no.
did. But you just did it.
Just
So.
line them up. God, you know, it's like this is how I've gotten by my whole life, you know. But literally, I just kept winning and wound up in the semifinals against Rosie O'Donnell, who was unknown at the time, and I beat Rosie. And then went up against Sinbad in the finals and beat Sinbad in the finals.
Wow.
And they're like, okay, you win $100,000. Now you're going to open for Tom Jones in Vegas. And I'm like, I can't open for Tom Jones in Vegas. So like, why not? I go, I got no fucking act. I've been making this shit up from week to week, you know? And they're like, well, get your ass in the club, you know, put together your 20 minutes, and then, you know, you're going to need an hour and a half if you want a headline. And so you quickly, you know, with my experience on stage, you know, it wasn't that hard, but at the same time, I put together an act and opened for the Temptations and the Four Tops on their TNT tour, and opened for Lou Rawls and Bobby Vinton and Rodney Dangerfield and Richard Belzer and Cheryl Lee Rolfe, all these different people over the years. And then, you know, then I started playing the comedy clubs. And of course, this all led to sitcoms and, you know, working in LA and moving from New York to LA, and, you know, from street performing to, you know, my first TV series, which was HBO's first series, First and 10. I played the Bulgarian field goal kicker. He could kick 60-yard field goals. His name was Zagreb Skeduski. He'd go up to, you know, girls in the bar and go, hey, I play for the California Bulls. I fuck you up. Yes, you know. Oh, she likes me. Hey, you know. Kind of a really funny character. And I wound up on that. I was supposed to do 2 episodes, and they made them laugh so much on set that I wound up 6 years on the show.
Yeah.
But HBO knew that I did all these voices and characters and stuff, and asked me to come audition at Kevin Yeager's studio for this show. They were working on Tales from the Crypt. And I'm like, Tales from the Crypt? I collected those comic books. This is unbelievable. But, you know, I didn't think it was going to be that big of a deal because HBO didn't have nearly as big of an audience as Network yet. And so I thought it would come and go and be for freaks like me, you know, that love this stuff, you know. And so I was just really excited to go down to Kevin Yeager's studio and see Chucky and see all these body parts and stuff on the walls and stuff that he had created. And there I saw the puppet, and because I knew the comic book, and there were all these other actors, you know, Michael Winslow, I remember, and Charlie Flesher, and all these other people that were auditioning. And I don't think they understood that he was supposed to be funny. I think they were all trying to make him creepy and scary and, you know, like kind of like Freddy Krueger or something, which is fine. I mean, Freddy could be quite funny too, but this was, you know, the Crypt Keeper was an entirely different ball of wax. And, you know, what I came up with for the voice was based on what I saw as the puppet. I gave it the texture because of he had holes in his throat and rotting teeth and, you know, that kind of thing. And I could tell Kevin had been listening to people for days, and he just had a little boom box with a little microphone that he clipped to me. It was recording me on a cassette. And he was sitting there, okay, next. And I started doing it. He was like, and he starts laughing, and I start laughing. I go, great, the Crypt Keeper laughs at his own jokes. You know, and I'm doing this whole thing. And he's going, okay, tomorrow I want you to meet Joel Silver and Dick Donner, you know, the 2 biggest guys in the business, 2 of the biggest producer, director, and, you know, and 2 of the producers of the show. So I came down and did it for them. I go, okay, good, you're hired. You know, it was probably maybe one of the easiest jobs I ever got. You know, at that time I was busy doing these sitcoms for the networks and First and 10 on HBO at the same time. And they would work around my schedule, which was great. And, you know, lo and behold, all of a sudden everybody was like, hey, who's the guy voicing that character I wanted for my cartoon? Who's the guy voicing that character I wanted for this? And the next thing I know, I have the best voiceover agent in Hollywood. And, you know, voiceover was always kind of like a major gig, but also a side gig to my on-camera and on-stage work. But as you get older, there are just less and less parts for you as an actor. Just because that's the nature of it. I mean, nowadays it's like a bad word to be a white male over 50. You know, it's like we want to be diversified, we want to go younger, more diversified, which is, fair enough, but at the same time, you still should be making as much content as they can for people who want to watch whatever they want to watch. But, and I still get work on camera, but I don't really care. I love doing voiceover work because I get to play characters I would never get to play on camera. I mean, they're not going to hire me. I got some guns, but they're not going to hire me to play Deadpool on camera, but I got to be the first Deadpool, and, I got to be Miko the raccoon, and I got to be all these really cool video game characters, and Buster Bunny, and, the skinny pig, I got to play, Mervis and Dunlap and Cat Dog. I mean, you get to play these characters you would never get to play on camera, so it's kept me working now into my 60s, so. I work with most of the jobs I do now because of the technology I can do for my home studios. I don't even need to leave my house. So, I mean, you're seeing me dressed up.
He's wearing shoes. He's wearing pants.
Half of my life is in pajamas or really comfortable clothes that could, double as lounging clothes wear or pajamas. You wind up wearing very comfortable clothes when you're recording because they don't make noise while you're recording.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me, when you were recording your sessions for Tales from the Crypt, how long would that be for you? Like, how much of a time commitment did it take per episode?
It really depended because they were trying to work around my schedule, my shooting schedule, but at the same time, they didn't want to record the Crypt Keeper sequences until they had shot the episode because they wanted to make them have a feel for the episode. And Gil Adler and Alan Katz, who are now the showrunners on the show, when they came in after the first season, were like, the Crypt Keeper's great. He's in a shroud, he's in his crypt, but let's see what he's like when he's not in the crypt. You got John Kassir, who can do all these different things. We can make him sing. We can make him, do, Stanley Kowalski from A Streetcar Named Desire. We can make him a shock jock. We can do whatever. So, Forrest Gump. So we go, let's see what happens if we start doing that. So they would write these sequences, and I would do 1 or 2 episodes. Sometimes the director would want to be involved from the episode, sometimes not. Kevin Yeager, who made The Crypt Keeper, of course, also directed a good number, if not most, of the Crypt Keeper sequences. It took like 5 different people to make The Crypt Keeper work. Here was the guy that worked the head and the torso. Can you hold that for me? The guy that worked the head and the torso. He would do one hand, and then there was another guy working the other hand. And then if the feet were working, there was a little woman that got underneath there with her feet, But the face had a guy who had a headgear on, Brock Winkless, who's no longer with us, sadly. But these guys were amazing puppeteers, by the way. They had worked on Jurassic Park. They worked on all kinds of stuff, doing dinosaur puppets. I mean, you name it. They weren't like, some of them, the Muppets are amazing puppets. So some of those guys even had background doing that kind of thing. But I'm talking about stuff that you would, like E.T. was a puppet, really, if you think about it. When he walked, there was a little person in there, but the rest of the time it was all, like Chucky and that kind of thing. So like one guy's, worked the works that just worked the face and the tongue, like this, and the other guy worked the other parts of the face, and then Brock, who did the mouth, had these little toggle switches for the lips. And when you'd open the mouth, you go, "Hello, creeps,"
So like 3 or 4 people were on the face alone.
Yeah. Face alone.
And then you had the body and feet.
Does anybody have that Digby Deal tabletop book of the Crypt Keeper, Tales from the Crypt? If you find it, it's really cool. It talks all about all the comic books, all the episodes, and then it talks about how the Crypt Keeper worked and how its evolution. It's really good if you get a chance to get a hold of one.
Beautiful.
A lot of people bring them in every once in a while to get signed, kind of thing. So I see them around. But it was a really great process. I think if you notice when we first started, the Crypt Keeper's mouth didn't move much because they didn't give Kevin much money to work with. So he was using spare parts from his shop. In fact, a lot of you have heard by now that they use Chucky eyes on the Crypt Keeper. You know, that's because that's what he had in his shop. You know, I think he had meant for that to be temporary, but loved it so much when he saw how much personality it brought to the Crypt Keeper. But the mouth, when we started, I had auditioned for what you normally hear as the Crypt Keeper, but when I came in to record the first couple of episodes, you know, hello kitties, he goes, no, the mouth doesn't work that well. Can you make him, you know, so if you watch the first couple of seasons, a season or two, the Crypt Keeper talks slower and more ominously.
That's hot.
And he's thank you. And he's still kind of fun and creepy and funny, but you know, well, kitties, and this little tail. You know, and so then when the show was popular and we got the opportunity to get some more budget to spruce him up, Kevin of course made him, you know, so you could really make him move his mouth and that kind of thing. And we were at, and it coincided with what, you know, Alan and Gil were doing with the personality of the Crypt Keeper, infusing my personality into it. But it, you know, gave me the opportunity to make him faster, funnier, and more, you know, openly vocal with what we were doing. So it was a pretty cool evolution. I mean, it was hard because if somebody wanted to interview the Crypt Keeper, you had to try to get all the puppeteers there and all this stuff. If you look at some later specials and stuff, they made this Crypt Keeper that it worked automatically with my voice, and it looks like shit. It really feels it feels like not only dead but dead. It's double dead, isn't it?
No expression.
Yeah, you know, it just didn't have the same thing. I mean, to have these puppeteers doing that job was really amazing. But I got to tell you, you know, I mean, nowadays somebody would probably try to CGI him or something. But to me, I think that would be a mistake. Because I think the fact that you guys are sitting here is, you know, when you were kids and you saw that, was the fact that he was a puppet. He was this creepy little puppet, and you had to watch him, and he infused you with, at first, fear that became some level of joy. I mean, you know, in my guesstimation, I think, you know, the reason we love horror is because it stimulates something in you that you don't feel every day. You know, this one thing in you that you don't get to experience. And you can watch horror movies and material with experiencing the fear without the actual physical danger of what might happen, you know, to you. Unless you have a heart attack while you're watching or whatever. Or unless it was a William Castle movie where they used to electrocute people in their seat on purpose to make them jump at certain points. You know, pass out the vomit bags so it's kind of fun to have like the Crypt Keeper, which was a character that let you know this is supposed to be fun. And he's a puppet, and he even talks to you like you're on a kid show. Hello, kitties. Hello, boils and ghouls. In our next little episode, oh look, it's Johnny's birthday. I wanted them to do that where they like, you know, like they used to do on Howdy Doody or some of these kid shows. They used to scan like whose birthday it was that month, you know. I wanted them to do that. They actually had thought about doing that. And they started posting that stuff in back of some of the comic books. So kids could write in and say, you know, if you've watched the show, you know, look whose birthday it is. So they started actually doing that. And then of course, with the realization that it could very well play to kids and would play to kids, they came up with a cartoon and then came up with the game show, Tales from the Crypt Keeper's Haunted House, and the Christmas album. Yeah. Have yourself a scary little Christmas. Which was really fun. It's really, really well done. Out of all the stuff we did on the side, because I was expecting to show up, they would have some synthesizer, you know, tracks or something to sing to, and some schlocky lines or whatever. But no, they had thought it out so well. They got an orchestra, they did beautiful arrangements. I came in, those were already recorded, and they gave me what the lyrics of the songs were, and then they cut me loose. So I sang the songs and all the ad-libs that are there, they just used all of it. And we had a blast making it for 3-4 days or whatever it took me to record 14 songs. And I was just so proud of how it came up. the sad part of it is they did one pressing. They used to do like the dolls and all that stuff you see out there. They did them in limited editions because they wanted them to be collectible like the comic book. But, as a result, a lot of people are like, I can't find any of that stuff. They find, of course, unlicensed stuff that's aftermarket stuff, which there's nobody really watching the store. I mean, the show was that long ago that some of the older people, including Jack Wall, who was our guy who did all the merchandising and stuff, is no longer with us, sadly. So nobody's actually pursuing other things. A lot of people ask me why aren't they doing new episodes? We don't have the rights anymore from EC Comics. And they've tried to sell them off to other venues, but of course those other venues would love to have this Crypt Keeper, but that's our version of the Crypt Keeper. In order to get that version of the Crypt Keeper, it has to be licensed to us. So and by the way, this happens in Hollywood with properties all the time. Yeah, and people just move on. They get on to other projects, especially our big producers. Our producers were Joel Silver, who produced all the Lethal Weapon movies, Matrix movies, Die Hard movies. I mean, he probably at that time was the biggest film producer in the business, along with Dick Donner, who was also working out of his office as producer and director, who directed the first Superman and Goonies and all the Lethal Weapon movies, and big guys. Walter Hill, 48 Hours, Warriors, Dreamscape. Bob Zemeckis. Back to the Future, Forrest Gump. You name it. David Giler, who was the producer of Alien. So these were the producers on our show, and they all had their hands in other things. So where they wanted to be more hands-on, and the first 3 episodes were directed by Dick Donner, Walter Hill, and Bob Zemeckis, and they're amazing episodes. But they couldn't do all of them, obviously, and they brought in Frankenheimer, and they brought in Tobe Hooper, and they brought in the best directors they could get. And then, of course, everybody wanted to be associated because of the producers as well, because of the popularity of the show. Everybody wanted to be involved with it, and a lot of actors wanted to direct episodes. So then you got Arnold Schwarzenegger to come in, and Michael Keaton directed one, and Michael J. Fox directed one, and Tom Hanks directed one. I mean, it was some pretty cool people involved with the show.
Who directed yours, Oils Welded?
That was Paul Abascal, and Paul Abascal was known as like one of the a makeup artist could do like really cool makeup. Not only do like regular makeup on the set, but also some effects type makeup and that kind of thing. And he'd always wanted to direct, and I thought he did a great job. I thought he did a really good job with Oils Well That Ends Well. But they had kept wanting me to be in an episode throughout like the entire series. But
as yourself.
As myself, playing, a character. But I just hadn't been available. In fact, they did a head cast for me for an episode called Forever Ambergris with Roger Daltrey. And I was supposed to be in that one. I think Steve Buscemi played the part that I was supposed to play, but I was on a pilot and I couldn't get free for it. So then they wound up writing this other one, Oils Well That Ends Well, and I added that, part of it in the episode. I pop out of a coffin like the Crypt Keeper does at the opening of the show, and they threw in some little tips to the character.
And you laughed.
Yeah, and of course the end, where the Crypt Keeper's watching me go, the other actors are good, but this one is a regular Gory Cooper, a Robert Redford, and that voice, I could swear he reminds me of someone I know.
Oh, John, I could talk to you personally about everything for forever, but let's throw it out to the audience for some questions,
please.
yes?
Yes, please.
Who has a question? Anyone at all? Oh, right there.
If you were offered a chance to return as the Crypt Keeper, would you take it?
Oh yeah, you know it. Nobody would be happier than me. As a fan of the the comic book and the show, I would love to see it back on anyway. But it was such a low pressure job, and honestly, because we didn't have all the budget went into the show. I never got paid what I should have got paid on that show anyway, you know. But I never complained because I was always working. I just enjoyed doing it. So it was a labor of love, and it's certainly, if I had the opportunity to work on it again, it certainly would, yeah.
I also relate to someone who struggled with growing up reading and writing, because I have autism. I kind of relate to that.
Yeah. You know, I mean, and as you know, you find other gifts that you're good at, other things that you're good at. I mean, I don't struggle as much with reading and writing. I mean, I'll go back and read every email that I write and stuff and see there are words that are inside out, or I stopped in the middle of a sentence and picked up at the end of the sentence without filling in one of my thoughts that I knew was, that my brain had just assumed I wrote that part too, and it didn't. You know, those kind of things you can overcome. But, I mean, there are people that have it a lot more severely than I do, obviously. But, you know, you grow to adapt to anything as a human being. I mean, I love the fact that animals that don't know what their shortcomings are just adapt. You know, you see a three-legged dog, you see a two-legged dog walking on only his hind legs. You know, I mean, it's amazing, you know, that kind of thing. So, you know, if you don't let those things define you very often, you can do it. Great question.
I thought I saw the man behind the curtain's hand shoot up. Did you have a question?
Yeah, where's your evil twin brother right now?
My evil twin brother?
Yeah, Mr. Crip himself.
Oh, the Crypt Keeper, you mean the actual puppet?
Yeah.
You know, that puppet, well, I'll use
Still
this.
scares the shit out of me.
That puppet. Don't go near that guy. He hasn't changed his diaper all day. Just kidding, man.
No,
He's gonna have me beat up later. Just,
no, stop.
he and the Teamsters that are around. No. The Crypt Keeper, you know, if you looked at him without all the rubber on him, it's clear plastic. You can see all the servos. Servos are these little motors that they use for like model airplanes that fly and stuff like that. I mean, it had a ton of them. I mean, Kevin was a genius constructing this thing. But they had to replace the rubber and the hair and everything on it every show because it was so thin to make it move like, you know, rotting flesh, that it would all tear and it breaks down really quickly. They'd have to mix it up each time.
So between every show,
Yeah.
every episode, they had to
Yeah.
make a new one?
Yeah, they had to make a new
mask.
new rubber
Yeah.
for it.
And I think you should sue Family Guy because you sound like Stewie. Or Stewie sounds
I
like
auditioned to play Stewie,
Oh.
and that's exactly what I did.
you sound like it.
But you know that happens. You go in, you go, you know, you do Stewie, you know, and the next thing you know, the guy who owns the show goes, oh, I can do that voice, and they just do it themselves. You know, and that's that. I'm not saying that's what happened. He could have been thinking that way all the
Well, I
time.
got
I do
you
not
back.
know.
Look at them.
But I will say that I did audition with that particular take on Stewie. But thank you for saying so. But honestly, so if he's in a vault somewhere, I'm sure, in a warehouse with some of the other Tales from the Crypt stuff. I do know that Kevin over the years has sold off different parts of different things. There was one of the conventions I was at had its own little horror museum, and there was an episode that Kevin directed called Lower Birth that was about the birth of the Crypt Keeper, and the two-faced man who was the father who married a mummy who was the mother birthed the Crypt Keeper. And the father, who was the two-faced man, they had to build like a fake second half to his face. The actor who played him was Kevin's brother, Jeff Yeager, who's really a gifted actor. He's been in a bunch of stuff, but so that half of the face was still around, and Kevin, you know, sold it to, you know, he likes to, what's he gonna do? Just have it sit falling apart in his shop? So he offered it up on eBay or whatever to people, and people have purchased different things from the show over the years. But I'm sure that that's because it's owned by, whether it works or not, or whether the technology is the way they would do it now.
I mean, just have it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's all, I mean, it had all kinds of wires and all kinds of stuff. I mean, it was yeah, it would be pretty cool. But, you know, they probably had more than one as a backup over the years, whatever, but they're in some vault somewhere without any rubber on them, so they probably look pretty creepy.
Even better.
Yeah.
Anyone else out here? Yes, right there, and then there.
With your background and everything like that, how much of the lines did you ad lib?
On the show, occasionally, but they had great writers. I'll tell you that it was, very often they would pimp out the Crypt Keeper for Bud Light or something like that, and then there was some other stuff that we did where the people would write their own copy from the advertising agency, and you could tell the difference because the writing was not as good as what our writers did. Like the puns seemed a little forced. They tried to put too much in the sentence, so it just didn't work. So a lot of times I would have to rewrite that stuff for them. But I would improvise stuff and it would wind up in the next script. It's like I was just being funny and I never thought it was going to wind up on the show. It's like, I don't know what we were talking about, but I was like, I love a ghoul who'll give you head and then let you keep it. Sure enough, it showed up in the next episode, where the Crypt Keeper's in bed with a corpse and they've got like one of those big hearts of candy in her lap and he puts his arm around her, her head falls off in his lap and he delivers that line, and I was like, awesome. But I used to have to improvise as him when each season I would have to do radio interviews on drive time that started on the East Coast and all the way across the West Coast, like maybe 50, 60 of them over 2 days as the Crypt Keeper. I mean, they didn't want to talk to me, they wanted to talk to the Crypt Keeper. So I would have to improvise as the Crypt Keeper and come up with all these puns and stuff, those guys that do the morning shows where it's usually 2 guys or a guy and a girl and, like the Howard Stern type of vibe where they're talking. In fact, I did do the Howard Stern when we released the Crypt Jam. Chucky Booker, who used to write for Janet Jackson, wrote for us. They had me on Howard Stern, and I'm on the phone calling, and Howard's like, okay, John, well, let me start out. Back then, if he didn't know you, he just went right after you. That's his humor was like, I'm just gonna pick this apart. So he'd start out with like, all right, John, I don't even like the Crypt Keeper. He's awful, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I'm just like you, Howard. I love to be hated. And the more he said stuff about me, the more I doubled down and made him laugh. And he was like, oh my God, this is hysterical. He goes, well, it's just a puppet I don't like. You're hysterical. He goes, well, what about this album? What is this, like the William Shatner album or something? And I'm like, no, it's actually, I said Chucky Booker wrote it. It's actually really good. And he started playing it and he listened to it. He goes, this is really good. He goes, but I hate these DVDs. And he goes, why can't you break these DVDs? I'm trying to break, and that kind of thing. So, but they called back and said, how much they loved it. They were going to have me back on. I never wound up back on there, but they did. Recently, somebody told me they were doing a thing like all the people who have done raps and never should have on Howard Stern. But then when they got to the end of it, they go, these are some ones that were successful, that were good, and they played the Crypt Jam, which was kind of fun. But every once in a while, I'd hear from Gary Delabate, who's his, thing. But I used to have to improvise all that stuff as the Crypt Keeper, I'd like start, that's a good one, I'll have to remember that one for the next one. I'd start, jotting, I had like a big cheat sheet, and I'd be on my way to an audition or something early in the morning, because I have to start at 5 in the morning, I'd be doing it from my cell phone, which was built into my car back then. Yeah. When you first had a cell phone, you either had the brick, which looked like a smaller version of a G.I. Joe, on the field radio, or you had it built into your car, and you picked it up with a wire like it was a regular phone, Good question.
Someone right there? Yeah.
What do you have exciting to tell us about your future projects?
I'll probably have to kill you if I tell you. They truly do make you sign, all these NDAs now for everything, non-disclosure agreements. But I work a lot for Illumination, it does all the Minion movies and stuff like that. Like when you go watch those, you'll see my voice flash by as like additional voices. But if you watch the movie, you'll go, that kind of sounds like it could be Kassir. I'm a shitload of voices through those things, The little Eastern European guys chasing them down the street. And, the snotty French art gallery opening, the Minions are always trying to find the next villain to be a Minions too. And so over the years, I've got to play some really fun villains and that kind of stuff. But You know, I do a lot of advertising stuff too. I didn't used to get as much of that, but over the years they've gotten more fun with some of the advertising stuff and want voices, and then around Halloween or, you know, the holidays, you know, a lot more people want, you know, that kind of thing. I get asked to do a lot of independent features and stuff on camera, and it really depends on whether I have the time to do it or, you know, whether I think it's gonna, you know, you don't want to do it, it's gonna suck. I hate to say that, but, you know, there's a lot of really fun up and coming young filmmakers. And even though it's not gonna pay me much, if they ask me to do it, of course I'm gonna get involved. I had a lot of people, you know, do projects with me when I was younger that I, you know, to give me an opportunity. So I feel like that's an important thing to give back. But, you know, I did last year, I did something for Spencer Charnas, who's, you know, the lead singer for Ice Nine Kills. And I had met him at a convention, we became buds, and he was like, oh, I want you to write an opening as the Crypt Keeper for us when we go out on tour. I go, well, wait till you get something really good. And then suddenly he calls me up and he goes, we're opening for Metallica on tour. And I go, great, now's the time to do it. And, you know, he called my agent and booked me. I mean, they paid me some good money to do this really cool opening, and they did a nice mix with it. And it, you know, when they were introduced, and they got me they got my wife and I tickets to go see them at SoFi Stadium, which seats 100,000 people for a concert. There was 85,000 people there that night. And, you know, to see them be introduced by that, we're just sitting there all of a sudden, it's like, hello, kitties, you ready to dance to death, or whatever it was, you know. I'm like, my wife's like, holy shit, that's you, you know. It's like, it's pretty cool. So, you know, I mean, by all rights, at my age, most actors can't get work, but I'm very, very lucky. I mean, obviously I work really hard at it, and but I feel really lucky just to continue to work. And now, like I said, I get to work so much from my own home. It's amazing, yeah. Thank you.
How were you working during COVID? Were you still working because it was from home, or?
More so actually from home, because not everybody had their home studio and they needed to get stuff done.
Yeah.
So you would, you know, have your foot in the door for some things. You would have to compete with more guys. And trust me, there's a lot of really good guys out there that I compete with on a basis, you know. You wouldn't believe how many things I audition for that I don't get. And not because I believe that pretty much most of the things I audition for, they could probably use my version of it. But they have so many good choices that, you know, the odds of you getting them. Most of the work I still get is because they're calling me directly to get it through my agents, you know. Yeah.
Do you have any questions over here, right there?
Is it true that Arnold Schwarzenegger designed the original Crypt Keeper? And then another part of that I was going to ask was, do you think it would be possible? I know you said that you guys own the right, or your company you worked for owned the rights to the way he looks, but not the name. Do you think it'd be possible?
they licensed the comic book from William Gaines, who was still alive at the time, 500 and some stories, which included Tales from the Crypt, Tales from the Vault, Two-Fisted Tales, whatever comic books were EC Comics back then that had those stories. They had 550 stories to choose from, and I mean, nobody back then did 93 episodes on cable. That was unheard of, you know. So at that point, they were done. Nobody was going to come up with the money to do more, because that was enough to sell them in syndication and that kind of stuff.
But do you think that they would be able to use like that image, like call them maybe something slightly different and sell that?
Well, you can see like Creepshow has gone out of their way to make whatever they're doing.
Well, like being able to use you and use that image, but not call it maybe.
They could call it something else. They'd probably get sued anyway, but it would be questionable as whether they stepped on their toes without the rights.
Yeah.
Without the rights. But I don't know. If it was in my hands, I mean, I know that there's the audience for it. I'm your ambassador to Tales from the Crypt. I have been for many, many years. Nobody has been more active with the show after the show than me. But I don't own any rights to it, and I don't own any rights to even my own character. You know, I get asked all the time, can you do this? Can you do that? And I go, no, if you're gonna show the character, I can't do it, because I can certainly use my voice for things, You know, and I've kind of evolved the voice a little bit, you know, as I do cameos and stuff like that. It's obviously the Crypt Keeper because I'm putting my personality into it, but I don't do it dead on to what I used to do for the show, just in case, you know.
You saw someone over here. You pointed to someone.
Oh
so
yes,
who
that
was it?
gentleman right there, go ahead.
With the rights being in the shaped place that they are, is there little to no hope for a restoration of the show or a physical release?
For, you mean the ones that already exist?
Yeah.
Well, the ones that already exist, I don't know why they're not on the air. I really don't, because they must own them. You know, the only thing that I can think of, first of the cartoons on Tubi, as you know, and that was probably Nelvana who made the cartoon, probably whoever did that probably was in the position to just give them the opportunity to do it. But I'll just come out and say this. Joel Silver was an asshole, and Gaines family didn't want to work with him anymore. And, you know, everybody knew he was an asshole in the business, but he was also the biggest producer in the business, so people worked with him anyway. Well, Joel Silver probably didn't treat them as badly as they probably think it was, because they think they probably should have made more money off of it. But the show was not a money-making thing. It was, all the money went into the budget of the show. You know, the merchandising was just a way for them to, you know, I mean, we were supposed to do more movies, but because they didn't really make upfront the money that they were, horror was not the mainstream audience pleaser that it is now. People loved horror, but it wasn't, you didn't get a lot of people who weren't into horror flocked into a movie to go see horror, you know? And so, you know, but Joel Silver and the other partners, Joel was the one who was the most hands-on with this particular project. If somebody else had been involved with it, I'm sure EC Comics would be, no problem, we'll give you the rights back, blah, 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 you know, let's do it. They've gone to try to sell it to other people. They were trying to do something with M. Night Shyamalan on, what was it, FX, what was it, TNT or one?
Sci-fi.
No, Sci-Fi, our show was actually on Sci-Fi some years ago. But he was gonna do a whole block of horror, and a new Tales from the Crypt was gonna be the flagship for it. But guess what, they couldn't get this Crypt Keeper, so he wasn't gonna do it. You know, so, you know, what happens is people will sell off the rights when you do it, and then later if something becomes popular, they go, well, we should get more money. Well, it's like, if you give you all that money, then how are we gonna make a show? We're not gonna have any money to make a show if all we do is pay out rights ahead of time. Now, if you want a percentage of that, that's how you're gonna make your money. If we do well, you make money. If we don't do well, no harm, no foul. So it kind of got to that, but the episodes that exist are owned by somebody. It's just a matter of the right person. Like I told you, our guy Jack Wall would have been that guy. He's gone. So whether maybe somebody's not watching the store, or maybe, you know, the person, you know, Dick Donner's gone. I'm sure if Dick were alive, he'd be on it, you know. I know his wife was wanting to do that. Laura Schuler Donner, who's a huge producer in our business. You'll now that I've said her name, you're going to see her name show up in all kinds of stuff that you watched. But I know that she was interested in trying to get it back on the air streaming, because, you know, like I said, HBO didn't own their own shows back in the day, because they didn't have the budget to give you all the money to make it. So the way you would make your money is selling it off in syndication to make the show. And but I'm sure that they could, if they wanted to or had the money to, they could license it for very little money, you know, in their earlier shows. Because a show licensing for little money is better than it not being seen at all. But I think it just has to do with not the right people being around to do it, maybe. So there is definitely the possibility that it'll wind up on streaming. That could happen anytime. It could happen tomorrow, it could happen within the next couple of years. Certainly there's an audience for it. If anybody asked me, certainly if I was in contact with the right people, I'm sure I'd be like, dude, why are you not doing this, you know? Some people told me it was because of music rights. I mean, when you make something and you paid somebody for an episode. You own the ability to, air it. Even, you may have to pay residuals to those people. I get residuals if they show Tales from the Crypt somewhere, but on streaming, the contracts for residuals are minuscule anyway, so it wouldn't cost them that much money. But they may have had a shelf life on those rights.
Yeah.
Like they may have said, like Danny Elfman might have said, well, you get the song, but you get it for 25 years.
Well, that's what's happening with all the old shows. You'll buy 90210 or whatnot on DVD, and all the music gets replaced with new music.
Oh, really?
Different music, not new music, but different music. Stuff that they don't need rights for.
See, I don't know that end of the business, but that could be a possibility.
Yeah.
It's like it could be that they have to renegotiate some kind of business with the music. We had huge musicians work on that show because they all wanted to work with these producers. Hans Zimmer, Ry Cooder did the music for the Walter Hill episode, The Man Who Was Death, which is awesome. We had Danny Elfman, obviously. We had big music on that show. So I don't know. If I was privy to all that information, I could tell you more. But that's why some of this stuff people just don't want to. If they've moved on to something new, that's where they're going to put their energy. Mm-hmm. People are like, why is it not on Blu-ray? Well, it wasn't that long before Blu-ray came out that they had just done it on HD. Plus, we shot it on 35 millimeter and made it look grainy on purpose, so it looked old school. That may not even look that great on Blu-ray. I don't know. It's that's not my expertise, but there's all these. Plus, it was not shot in letterbox. It was shot to a square TV, 4x3. Is that 4x3? Whatever it is, it was shot to that. So there's a lot of reasons why some old stuff just doesn't happen. But you can see, those guys that have the Turner Classic Movies or whatever, you could turn on and see like a really good version of one of your favorite movies from, the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, because they were dedicated to restoring and purchasing and getting this material and making it available to people. So, yeah.
All right, John, that's all the time we have.
That's all the time we
Time
have.
flies when we're having fun, right? Give it up.
Well, thank you. Thank you, kiddies, and have yourself a scary little Christmas. And a happy Thanksgiving to you all. Thank you. Did you win a contest?
Everybody, take a picture. You get a picture. Get back. There's my assistant ready. Oh, wonderful. Okay.
And just a note, I'm leaving. Because of my flight, I'm leaving here probably. I'm going to start packing up around 3:30. So if you needed anything at my table, come by. If you don't, I won't be insulted. But thank you guys for everybody who did come by. I really enjoyed talking to you individually. Thank you guys.